Hi, everyone. Welcome to our fifth She's Local 30-minute boost. I'm your host, Jen Maseda, the CEO of She's Local, the organization that brings you accessible, relevant, and relatable local conferences, and now digital live engagement opportunities for local women to connect, inspire, and move along whatever path you choose. Today's boost is all about tips and tricks to help you stay calm, help you to be better able to solve problems and cope with this new reality. Joining us on our boost today is psychotherapist Karen Zilberstein. Karen specializes in working with children and families as a clinical director for A Home Within. She's also the author of Parenting Under Pressure, Struggling to Raise Children in an Unequal America, which has won 2 Indie Book Awards. Thanks for being here on our boost today, Karen.
Say that studies of pandemics show that when there's a pandemic and when there's isolation, that anxiety is pretty prevalent throughout the population. Other changes to daily life also cause anxiety, but anxiety is both a physiological and an emotional state. And I want to stress that you feel it in your body, right? It's your body's stress response to things being different and to needing to adjust, to having fear and apprehension. So fear and apprehension are most likely the feelings you're going to feel, but your body is reacting because there's a physiological response that it takes to prepare you when you're in a fearful or stressful state. And it arouses your nervous system. You're going to find that your heart might be beating more rapidly. You might feel a lot of tension, sleeplessness. You're hyper aroused in your body because that's what your body needs to do to react and to solve a stressful situation. You may feel that along with emotions of fear and apprehension, that you have restlessness, agitation, trouble sleeping, ruminating thoughts that you can't get out of your head, excessive worries, difficulty concentrating. It can go on, but those are the most likely manifestations.
Yeah, so there's nonstop news about COVID-19 and the coronavirus. What should we be doing with this nonstop information and ever-changing information?
Yeah, and that's really hard because we need information because that's how, the reason that you have these responses in your body and your body prepares you and arouses itself is so that you will respond to whatever is fearful or apprehensive and solve the problem. So you want to have these responses, you just don't want them to go on past where they need to go. So my advice is to say, okay, I'm anxious about something for a reason. There's something I need to do. Let me figure out what I'm anxious about. Let me see how much I can solve it. And then I have to let go because I've done everything that I can. And do I need more information? If I don't need more information, don't get more information, because too much information is going to keep you in that cycle of being anxious for no reason. So once you know what you're anxious about and what you need to do, and you're doing what you need to do, you need to really cut off some of that information.
Okay, because I was going to ask, what should we do? What are your top level things that you would tell somebody that has recognized within them that they have this anxiety that's bubbling up, all those physical and emotional cues that you just mentioned? What are the top things that we should do to manage this?
Yeah, and the first thing you should do is say, yes, I have anxiety, and acknowledge it, and there's a reason that I'm anxious, and so I'm going to take care of what's making me anxious as best I can. I'm going to take the safety precautions, and then I need to start, once I've done that, calming the anxiety. And there's lots of different ways you can do it. You can do it through the physiology, or you can do it through the emotional state. It's actually faster to regulate your body than to regulate your emotions. And if you start either way, regulating your emotions helps regulate your body. Regulating your body helps regulate your emotions. So the fastest way is to take some deep breaths, to get some exercise, to do things that calm down your nervous system. Mindfulness, being in a beautiful place and taking note of it, Deep breaths are really very, very helpful. It's the quickest way, but they have to be deep. You have to breathe in hold it for 4 or 5 seconds, and then breathe out really slowly. You need to get it to go all the way down to your stomach. It really does help regulate. You can also try we call that from the bottom up to do your physiology. And I should say that different people have different ways of doing that. So exercise helps some, but music can help people. You have to know what is calming to you and what calms your body. You can also do it from the top down, and it's a lot harder, which is to talk yourself through it. To say, I don't need to be anxious. I'm going to do something really fun I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to change how I think. And you can argue your way out of it, but that takes a lot more energy and a lot more time.
That's interesting. Just as a side note, I'm muting every now and again, and all of you are muted right now, but we will open to questions here in a little bit. So start thinking about, what is really important to you and what you'd love for Karen to answer. Now, a lot of people are in isolation because they're alone with themselves in their homes. That I did not explain that well. Some people are isolated with their loved ones and family and roommates. And some people, there's no one in their home right now. Tell us a little bit about the impact of that.
Yeah, and that was what I'm glad you asked that question, because that was right when I ended, that's what I left out. That one of the other ways that we really calm ourselves and regulate ourselves is by being with other people and other people taking that function. So they've actually done studies with psychotherapists where people are anxious and they've measured the heart rate. And one person, so the psychotherapist heart rate being calmer and slower helps regulate the other heart rate to get calmer and slower. So one person's calm helps calm down somebody else. Being able to talk to somebody and get out your anxiety and helps you actually calm down. If the other person can be listening and validating, not if they rile you up. So it is very important to touch with people. That calm. I know that when we first started having to move to therapy, being trained, but 6 weeks in, we're all getting used to it and finding a way to do it. So just because it feels awkward at first, don't give up. People are resilient. You get used to things. It's the adjustment that's hard. And get over the bump, because it really is incredibly important to be in touch with other people. It is the number one thing that we know by studies that leads to resiliency and a better life is having social connections.
And you talked about leading with this sense of calm will help others in your home also present the same sense of calm, or will get them to a point of feeling better. Now, that weighs heavily on someone who typically always has to be that person to bring everyone else to this state of calm and this tamping down of concern and anxiety. What would you say to, one, encourage that person who's always that one bright spot in the family, or and two, how can we encourage others to take that role so it's not so burdensome on one person in the family if it is?
Yeah, and I would say a few different things. One is that nobody can do it without being fed. So in life, the reason why we have mutual relationships is that I take care of you and you take care of me. And when it becomes one-sided, one person doing all the taking care of, that leads to depletion, right? There's no food or gas going in to replenish them and giving them. So you can never be the only one. You need to find somebody in your life who's going to do the same to you that you're doing for other people. I also think that we can't expect people to be perfect. You know, you're going to be anxious, and the part of the issue is also to not let it become contagious.
Hmm.
So it may be that you have to go for a walk if you're way too anxious, but I also think there's a place in families to have a discussion about it and to say, listen, I'm feeling anxious right now, to own it. You don't need to feel, I'm going to be fine. It takes me a little while. I get anxious, then I get over it. Give me some space and I'll be fine. What you don't want is for other people to take on your anxiety. Kids do it a lot. Kids are watching. I mean, one of the nice ways of owning your anxiety and telling somebody how you're going to handle it is kids are watching how you do that. They're going to get anxious. They actually don't need a perfect parent. They need some instruction on how to deal with their anxiety. And the other thing they need is that kids often think that whatever happened was their fault. So they may not even think, oh, you're anxious about the coronavirus and I'm going to be anxious about the coronavirus, or you're anxious about money, so I am. They might, and you want them to know that you're going to take care of those things. But they might think you're anxious because I just, went out and played in the mud and tracked mud in the house. So you want to let them know that you're okay and that it's not their fault.
And how do you broach that? How do you even start that conversation? Do you sit down at dinner? Is it what do you say, and how do you start it?
You can do it during dinner, but it's sometimes nice one-on-one, especially if you see a child getting anxious or showing a behavioral upset. It's good to have a quiet moment. So you don't want to ever have that conversation in the middle of a storm, because in the middle of a storm, everybody's thinking brains are offline and you're just going to reaction. So you sit down when people are calm and you say, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been a little different lately. I've been a bit more irritable, or I've been a little more restless. Whatever it is that you're showing, I don't know if you noticed. Did you notice that? And see first if they noticed. If they say yes, you can say fine. If they say no, you can say, well, I want you just to know that I've had some worries. They have nothing to do with you. They're nothing you have to worry about. I'm taking care of them. But sometimes when I get worried, I act this way, and I don't want you to have to worry about me. I just want you to know I have friends who are helping me, and I'm thinking it through, and I'm going to be fine. But if I get a little sharp, just know that that's what it is. And if you give me a little time, I'll work it out. Something like that. There's a lot of variations you can do.
Sure.
But
I love that language. If I get a little sharp, I'll probably be using that later on today.
yeah, what you really don't want them to do is to be reacting to you. So you want to tell them what you need, because when they react to you, it makes it worse.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of women who are now out of work or are working from home, both extreme stressors with new coworkers, let's say, whether it's your pets or other humans. How can they feel less stressed that they're now in a teaching role, now in a work role, now potentially out of a job? Tell us how to feel less anxious and stressed about that.
Yeah, and I do understand that pets are really the big winners here, that they're actually quite happy with this new situation. Yeah, it's really hard. There's a lot of stresses on women, because even though there may be other people in the house, it tends to always fall on moms to do the childcare, and it's still not even. It's really important to have realistic expectations for yourself.
Mm.
And most employers, not all, but most employers are relaxing their expectations. So it may be that to get the pressure off, you need to have a conversation with the employer or with the school. Schools are relaxing their expectations. You need to think, what is really realistic for my family right now? Mm-hmm. How much schoolwork is going to get done? How much work is going to get done? What's the balance I need to find? The rules have changed right now. We're not functioning under the same rules in terms of work and school and everything else. So part of the adjustment is finding out what's going to be the new routine and the new expectations for yourself. I was just talking to somebody today who I work with who was having a hard time with this. And I asked if the stress was coming from the employer or from herself. And she said, no, it's from myself. I can't stop making my expectations the same that they were. So we decided that she would make the same expectations for the day the same that she was, and then she'd cut it by 25% after she'd made her list. Then she'd go back and change it by what was more realistic, because it's simply not realistic.
Yeah. We have open meetings where we discuss topics that women want to hear at our local conferences, and we had one in Metro West yesterday. And one of our board members brought up, Ashley brought up, you know, at the beginning of this, everyone had this great sense of kindness and love towards each other. And I'm not saying that that's gone, but there's now this sense of frustration and anger. Are we going through these phases of loss? What's happening, and how can we redirect that anger for back to the kindness or in a different way?
Yeah, there is grief and loss, quite a lot. And I think the first few weeks, everybody was in adjustment. I'm going to make this work. How am I going to make this work? And it's really beginning to fray on people. I'm seeing a lot of people's nerves really start to go. And I think there needs to be some mourning of what's lost, and to give permission for that. But there also needs to be a focus on what can I control, what can I do, and how can I make this time better. So some people who are getting through have set, again, new priorities. Here's something that I've always wanted to do that I couldn't do before. I'm going to plant a vegetable garden, or I'm going to learn this, or I'm going to, but what's realistic for this new, and is there something every day that you can set that you can look forward to, even if it's something different than what you used to have? And I think that can help a lot. But being angry and a little depressed is going to be a little normal too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you for helping us to feel normal. I will work on that. I'll work on that. I want to open it up to questions from our audience today. So what we're going to do now is at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a little icon that says reactions. If you're interested in asking a question or you want to make a comment, please give us a thumbs up or the clap sign or the high five. I'll come right to you. I will unmute. You can ask your question and then I'll mute you back on and Karen will answer. So let's open it up to questions. Shannon, I'm coming to you.
I would love if you could comment a little bit on specifically talking to teenagers about this. I have 15-year-old twin boys, and I feel like they have been really resilient and they're doing great. But then they'll like burst into this big angry tirade about something that's really not what they're angry about. And so they watch the news, they hear all this stuff, even when you're trying not to let them do that. Like, how do you talk about it in a kind of a deep way with them? And how much do you share about how anxious you feel about it?
Those are really good questions. So it depends on how good your kids are at talking, whether you want to broach it with questions or whether you want to make statements. You could I would start by commenting on, I notice that every now and then, you've been handling this really well, but every now and then you are exploding in a way that you weren't before. So it makes me think that there's stuff about this that's really hard for you. And I would expect that. You know, your life has been changed and turned upside down. And I actually think that for teenagers who were stepping out and becoming independent, the fact that they're less independent is really quite hard. You know, their developmental phase just got interrupted completely. So I would open it up with permission and with, I could expect a lot of kids your age. And a lot of times when kids are angry, it's because there's something hard going on and they're making this hard adjustment. I would expect that, and I hope you feel like you can talk to me about that. I'd love to hear what it's like for you right now and see if that can open it up. But give them permission to feel that. And you can even ask, do you worry me? Are you worried about the coronavirus? These are the things that people are typically worried about. Are you worried about finances? You're going to hear a lot of things on the news. Not all of them relate to our family. And so I don't know if you're worried about the things that you need to worry about or not. So you got to give me a sense and what questions do you have. Does that answer it? Or
Yeah, that's great. I like all the words that you just said. I really, yeah. I have one of each, like one talker, one who won't be able to talk. So I'm going to have to take a little different approach with each one of them, but I like that.
So the one who can't talk might do well with listening, even listening to the one that can talk.
Mm.
You know, who might say the words for them.
We had a question in the
Thank you.
chat. Thank you, Shannon. We had a question in the chat from Zoa. Similar, how much COVID-19 information should you share with your kids, especially younger kids, and without causing the anxiety and without keeping them in a bubble if not sharing anything?
Right. Well, kids have to know something because their world has changed. So they need at least as much information as they need to understand why it's changed. The younger the kid, the more reassurance they need. Because little kids really, they don't have the cognitive ability to figure it out themselves. They tend to worry a lot more. They're much more dependent on grown-ups taking care of them. So they worry a lot more because they can't take care of themselves. And somebody who's older and can take care of themselves, feels more in control of the world, has a different type of worry. So I would give them information and reassurance at the same time. And I would say, you know, you've probably heard, and they pretty much do, you know, things have changed. And the reason is, you know, that there's something called a virus, which can get people sick, but you have to be close to somebody who has it to get it. And that's why we're doing these precautions. And as long as we do this, nobody here should get sick and we should just be fine. Yeah. So we're doing everything we can to keep you safe. And it means life will be a little different, but you should be fine.
Okay, we're going to go to Vicky. Vicky, you've got your hand up. I'm going to unmute you, Vicky. Go ahead and ask your question. Hi, Vicky. Oh, you're still muted on your end. Okay, looks like Vicky's set. Yep, you're trying. Type back in the chat. You've got your hand up. I'm just gonna, okay, you're done. Got it. All right, thanks, Vicky. All right, Sylvia, you've got your hand up. I'm coming to you, unmuting.
Hi, I'd like to know, how do you speak to like a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old? I have them. My son is an essential employee in the front lines, and they really are not seeing their dad since the beginning of all this. They're staying with grandma and grandpa, and they get concerned and the anxiety of, is dad going to get the virus? Is he going to die? So I get that a lot from the 8-year-old and the 10-year-old.
Yeah, that's really hard when there's a first responder. I mean, and thank you to your husband for taking on that role for all of us. Again, I think that you need, what was that?
It was my son and my grandchildren who I have.
Oh, these are your sons, so they're staying with you.
My 2 grandchildren who are staying with me.
And your son is yourself, as the first responder. Yeah. I think similar, I would, first of all, I would want them to, because they're older, to be able to express their worries. And it sounds like you're listening to that. And I would give them acknowledgement that, of course, they're worried about that. And I would ask them, but do you trust dad to take every precaution to keep himself safe? Because he really is. And statistically, if he's healthy, even if he gets it, he wouldn't get really, really sick. So I would also say, you know, of course you're worried, and there's always that risk. But first of all, he takes every precaution. And second of all, he's really healthy. And what we know is that the people who are getting really sick and dying are the ones who are older or sick already. And it's very, very few people like him that are getting sick and dying. So I think he's going to be okay. But I know that's really hard for you to believe. But what do you need, you know, for me to help you feel better about this? And see if they can come up with things too.
Okay.
But I do think they need the, and I would put those facts in there with the you know, statistics. Because I think that they don't believe that it's too vague. You need to point to it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, anyone else with questions? What if you don't have anyone to share your anxiety with? What if you're completely isolated? What are some strategies for people that are completely isolated?
There are a lot of online places right now where there are some online support groups. There are also some free videos that you can watch. There's some free apps for mindfulness and calming down. But I would say that people shouldn't be completely isolated if they don't have to be. That it's not good emotionally, it's not good physiologically. If you're isolated, you're upping your risk for getting sick. I mean, not from coronavirus, but in general. You're lowering your physiological and psychological immune system by being alone. We really need other people. So think about where you can have connections, who you can have connections with. And there are volunteers out there. I know I'm in Western Mass, but we have a Western Mass page where people are putting needs and other people are meeting those needs. And that includes companionship. If you need somebody to talk to, you can also find a therapist and connect with them and have somebody who listens to you. But my recommendation is not to be alone.
Yeah, thumbs up from Joanne. Did you have a question, Joanne? Shake your head. Yeah, okay. Go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, I actually have older kids. They're 19, 20 years old. Definitely non-talkers. One that, well, both of them have anxiety, existing anxiety anyway. It's hard to discourage one of them to get off of the social media, which is where you're getting all the news.
Yeah.
I think he also recognized that he could benefit from a therapist, but I'm curious as what you're seeing as far as connection remotely in order to connect with a therapist. Because it's hard enough to do in person, I think. And so I'm just wondering, seeing as far as the online, you would recommend to say to him to encourage that, because I think he wants to, but then he lacks follow through as well.
Yeah. I'm finding it's working, and it's working particularly with his age group. There's one or two kids who are more talkative over video than they were in person, which is really interesting to me. It's been more of an adjustment with the younger kids who want to play, and we've had to find games, but they're doing pretty well. Now, these are mostly people I knew already. I don't know what it would be like to start. I haven't started with a teenager.
Yeah, I should specify that he's a non-talker with me. He definitely is more willing to talk to a therapist.
Yeah. So it might work. It's really not so bad. And teenagers are really used to technology. So,
are any of these groups that you had mentioned previously, is that something that you would post online? It sounds like, I mean, I don't know if there's anything that would resonate with him, but where people have a need that they can find some volunteers to talk to or something?
Yeah, but this is in Western Mass. Are you in Western Mass?
No, but if it's online, I guess it doesn't matter, right?
Well, it's a Western Mass spreadsheet.
We can find resources
that I have access to.
We'll find some.
So I don't know what the resources are in the Boston area.
Yeah, we're South Shore. That's okay. I just thought it was an online thing.
Yeah.
I have a question in the chat that I'm going to read from Michelle. What if you live with a spouse who is constantly online, reading and watching media, who is angry and will not respect boundaries to try to protect your energy? Great question, Michelle.
That is really, really hard. And it sounds like there's been a discussion already about how it's impacting other people. But I think the way to always start with somebody is with empathy, with understanding and empathy. So you bring them to you with having empathy and saying, you know, I get how anxious you are, and I get that you're doing this, and how is it helping you? And then you move to, do you know what the impact is on everybody else? And can we find a way for you to get your needs met and us to get our needs met in a way that works for everybody? Because, you know, I get that it's working for you, but then it's making everybody else more anxious also. So, you know, is it worth it that it's making you angry? Is it worth it? What would work and what wouldn't? And to try to start with the empathy and the acknowledgement of what's underneath, and then move towards some agreements.
That's great.
If you start with an accusation, you just put people on the defensive.
Yeah, so come at them with empathy. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. We are 1 minute over. That's never happened on a boost. This is so exciting, and there's so much information that that we could continue to talk about. But we are 30 minutes, and we're going to stick to it. So thanks everybody for coming. Next week, we have another 2 phenomenal opportunities to connect. They're both really tremendous. So watch for the schedule. It's coming out soon. And thank you, Karen, for joining us. We are grateful for your time and for your information.
Well, thank you, and take care. Hang in there. It's tough, but hang in there.